Anchors up, sails at full. Welcome to the Sloopcast. How are you doing today, Kyle?
Doing right, Jared. Doing all right. Go ahead and share your camera.
Oh, not sharing my... Okay. My bad. Yeah. How are we doing today, everybody?
Here we are.
Whew. Here we are, man. We did it. Everyone did it. I don't even, honestly, and this is a dumb thing to say as a podcast host. I don't even know what to say at this point. I don't even know what to say at this point.
Job finished?
Yeah, job done. All you can say is national champions. Yeah. That and Rip Bozo. Who's the Bozo? Literally the entire top 10. Literally the entire... You want to talk about a decisive...
6 of the top 10.
Well, it's even more than that if you look at the pre... I know the AP put out one on Tuesday, but if you look at the college football committees, by the way, already off the rails, new tradition, good tradition. There we go. If you look at the final college football playoff committee, I think it's the entire top 8 minus Georgia. Literally, Ohio State defeated, according to the playoff committee, because I don't care about the AP. If you look at the playoff committee's final rankings that seeded the playoff, Ohio State at some point beat 7, well, I guess 6, because Ohio State would have been in there as well. You can't defeat yourself. Duh. Well, actually, Ohio State did defeat themselves on a Saturday after Thanksgiving, but we're not talking about that this episode. That's the AP one. That's the AP one. I'm less interested. The final college football playoff committee rankings, which I believe I put yeah, here we go. I'll drop this in the live chat. The final college football playoff committee rankings was Oregon 1, Georgia 2, Texas 3, Penn State 4, Notre Dame 5, Ohio State 6, Tennessee 7, Indiana 8.
Yeah, that is definitely better.
That's also what matters, right? The other teams fell because Ohio State whooped their ass. If we're being honest, of the final top 8, Ohio State beat every single team except Georgia, including Kyle, 2 SEC teams. So we can go ahead and put this Ryan Day can't win the big game narrative to bed. We can put this whole SEC yada, yada, yada bullshit to bed. We can put it all to bed. Ohio State win. I believe this was at the time of the rankings. Ohio State defeated 5 separate top 5 teams this year.
Yeah.
5 separate top 5 teams this year. This is and of course the 12 team playoffs makes this possible, which is why, thank God, we have the 12 team playoff. This is the most definitive national champion of all time.
Period.
Yeah, this is the most definitive. And of course, that's not fair in many respects to many other teams because they didn't have the opportunity to do this. But Ohio State did have the opportunity to do it, and they did it. So they basically beat a top 4 team 4 games in a row. Yeah.
They beat those top 5 opponents, Jared. Those top 5 by an average margin of 18.6 points.
18.6 points. Yowza. The fact that it's accepted that we game the playoff system the best by playing slow to stay fresh means not only did we beat all the other teams, but from a logistics perspective, beat the playoff itself. I'll take that. Ryan Day was talking the entire fall camp
season.
Right. But the entire fall camp of, well, you know, what happened? You know, Ryan Day was brought to Ohio State by Urban Meyer to bring in speed. This is why he was brought to Columbus, to, you know, no huddle, speed offense, go, 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 go. And this was the absolute slowest Ohio State team we had seen since Ryan Day was brought in as an offensive coordinator. And Ryan Day told us this was going to be the case before we saw it. He's like, we got to play 16 games this year.
He's playing the long game. He was playing the long game.
And you can say
knew exactly what needed to be done. He brought in key players from the portal to fill in those gaps. Hey, Trey can't do it by himself.
Yep.
Hey, let's get some other players who can help fill in to take some extra snaps out from some of our starters there, because we're playing the long game here.
Right. And like
and as a result, you get a 4,000 yard quarterback, 2 1,000 yard running backs, and almost, I believe it's almost, I'm verifying real quick. Did he just, nope. Yeah. 2, and also 2, he just got it. And also 2 1,000 yard receivers as well.
Yeah. And
how about that? 4,000, 2 1,000s, and another 2 1,000.
Because I've seen some people online, and we throw the word hater around a lot, but whatever, where they're like, well, Ohio State got really lucky with injuries. Well, well, hold on. I know when you hear that, you think that Ohio State didn't suffer a lot of injuries, which they didn't suffer a lot of injuries, but they suffered some very specific injuries. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about Ohio State's injuries. I'm talking about their opponent's injuries. They point out that that both Tennessee and Oregon lost their starting running backs in the games. And they both lost their best receivers in the games. That Notre Dame had a bunch of injuries down the stretch. Notre Dame didn't have their best cornerback, their best defensive end. Notre Dame was also suffering injuries. But this goes back to what Esquire was saying and what we're talking about now. Ryan Day and the entire Ohio State staff knew this was coming. They planned to play 3 playoff games. They planned to play this stretch. They were prepared for it. And they prepared for it better than other teams did. By limiting touches, by slowing the offense down. It's almost like they've coached in the NFL before and knew what to expect. Spikes, A+. A+ comment.
There was, what was it? Was it the Oregon game? I think it was the Oregon game where I think Jeremiah Smith was on the field half as much as Ibuka was, or something like that. It was something ridiculous. They were like, oh, yeah. What's going on here? And it's saving legs, saving snaps, all for this moment here. Like just such a great job by this coaching staff of watching the snap counts, seeing who has the hot hand with your running backs or receivers, and who needs the breaks there, who needs to rest their legs. Just an outstanding job by this coaching staff.
And it showed up in the slot fade. Sure did.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and Austin says offensive line injuries just happen in the trenches. but they set up their skill players to not get injured. He points out Tyleek apparently had a high ankle sprain and did since Penn State and was playing through it. Didn't show it. Tyleek had an amazing, the entire defensive line, Ty Hamilton, of course, Jack Sawyer and JT get a lot of the attention and the love down the stretch, but Tyleek and Hamilton played amazing down the stretch as well. They were just simply more ready.
Mm-hmm.
And don't be surprised if you start to see other teams start to emulate this. Of course, it's a lot easier to emulate this when you're Ohio State and you have the depth of Ohio State. Yeah.
In case those that haven't picked up, we're just going to go ahead and skip our grading this one, and we're just going to just purely
A plus.
Just purely A plus all across the board.
A plus is all across the board. You won the national championship. That's what else needs to be said.
Except for special teams, there was no special teams touchdown, so they just get an A.
Hey,
I'm kidding.
Kyle,
of course.
Kyle, there's a lot of people with very specific apps on their phone that are very happy with the special teams.
Oh yeah, there are.
Yes. By the way, Ohio State covered in every single game in the playoffs. Didn't just win, covered.
Every single top 5 opponent, Jared, they covered.
Well, that's also 4 of the playoff games. So, you know, what Penn State would have been the other one in the regular season, right? That was the other top 5 win.
Yeah. All right. A lot of ways we can really talk about this game here. I mean, where do we want to start? Ohio State started off hot. First 4 possessions, they score 3 touchdowns and a field goal to go up 24 to 7, I believe it was. Yeah, it was 24 to 7. And yeah, I'm glad you brought up that first drive by Notre Dame. There was a lot of people,
including people in our Discord server,
including our Discord server. We're talking about that long first drive by Notre Dame, and I mean, hats off. That's what they needed to do. They did a 18 play, 75-yard, 9 minutes and 45-second drive. That is what they were trying to do. That was all game there. If they had it their way.
And by the way,
to limit the number of drives that Ohio State could have.
I got timestamps in the Discord server too. Everyone was freaking out. I'm like, guys, they can't give Riley Leonard the ball 9 times a drive. He's not going to survive. Mm-hmm. And he goes and pukes and stumbles to the sideline at the end of that drive. He doesn't throw an accurate pass that entire half. He definitely had a concussion. I don't know if he definitely had a concussion or not. That could have just been straight up fatigue. Like that could have just been a concussion, and just a severe lack of oxygen can look a lot like each other. And I think he was just suffering.
And he had a lot better second half, but we'll get to that though. Looking at Ohio State's drives, it was 4 touchdowns and then a field goal. So the first 5 drives were all ended up with points. And then it could have been six straight if Ohio State didn't fumble the ball, because they were in great shape to score again there. And then that's when a lot of Ohio State fans started to fret there. It's like, 2-score game, 1-score game. No, I was still feeling pretty good. Was I a little concerned? Sure. They brought it down to a 1-score game. Sure, it should be a little concerned. But was I fretting that Ohio State was going to lose this game? No.
I was only concerned about the cover, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah. These guys never would have survived the Trestle years.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh God.
A lot of people forget
Some of the youngins in our server.
Those early Trestle years. Every game.
Oh, it didn't matter. And by the way, I just want to say also, I'm going to pat myself on the back again. I straight up said, and it looked like this through the first half. I go, guys, this is just going to be like playing a military academy game. Yeah. And boy, didn't honestly, it look like playing a military academy game through the first half.
And honestly, this was almost what I was expecting. I think I had the final score, I'll say 31-17. And Notre Dame scored an extra touchdown in there. So it was kind of like what I kind of expected this game to be.
I feel like it would have played out that way had we not had that late fumble.
Yep.
Abuk has done many amazing things at Ohio State. That won't define him by any means. Ohio State dominated the middle eight. If I never hear the phrase middle eight ever again, I'll be good. I feel like I've heard the phrase middle eight more this month than I have in my entire life.
All right, I'm afraid I've got some bad news. All right, I want to go ahead and start talking about some of the players here, but we'll go ahead and take our first ad break here. TheSloopcast.com is your go-to place, everything Sloopcast related. There you can check out our YouTube page, youtube.thesloopcast.com. Visit Discord, discord.thesloopcast.com. You can come into our Discord channel, talk to fellow Ohio State fans, talk to our fellow Sloopcats down in the chat here, and a lot of great fun over at discord.sloopcast.com, Patreon, merch, 7071, all of those links if you want to help support Jared and I. Again, that is thesloopcast.com. We'll go ahead and take this break and be right back talking about some Ohio State players.
Austin says, can we talk about Donovan Jackson, that beautiful man? Donovan Jackson, I don't think enough can be said. And I feel like we'll definitely give Donovan Jackson at some point over the next couple weeks, we'll do a full season in review. And I think that's which is not what this episode is. This is about talking about the national championship game. But Donovan Jackson saved the season. And that's a thing that we'll talk about in that episode in more details. But Kyle and I had been saying literally for a year now, literally since the beginning of last off season, Ohio State will go as far as this offensive line takes them. We said it on repeat the entire offseason. Hey, what's Ohio State going to do this year? People would always ask us. I go, Ohio State will go as far as the offensive line takes them. It's clearly the weakest spot in the team. They'll go as far as the offensive line takes them. And then Ohio State lost their two of their three best offensive linemen through the course of the season to injuries. Had you told me that in August, oh, by the way, Ohio State's going to lose Seth McLaughlin, who, is amazing. They're going to lose Seth McLaughlin and they're going to lose, Josh Simmons. I'd be like, well, that's the season then. Okay, that's the season then. They're not going to make it. Donovan Jackson, however, was apparently a left tackle all along. He faced, and not so much with Notre Dame, their best pass rusher didn't play in this game. He didn't play the entire playoffs, but against Tennessee, he played against a first round edge rusher. Against Oregon, they have they definitely have a first round pass rusher and probably some other guys who might be first round pass rushers when their time comes. He faced Abdul Carter during the regular season. Texas has an elite defensive line with elite edge rushers all over the field. Donovan Jackson gave up one hurry the entire playoffs.
That was against Tennessee.
It was against Tennessee. Yes. He gave up one hurry, not one sack, not one knockdown. It wasn't a hurry. It was a pressure. My bad. It wasn't a hurry. It wasn't a hurry. It wasn't a sack. It wasn't a knockdown. It was a pressure. He gave up one pressure the entire playoffs. And again, in 3 of those 4 games going against elite pass rushers. That shouldn't be possible for a career guard. Donovan Jackson, maybe more than any one other person on this team, secured the national championship for Ohio State. And that has to be said. He's the MVP of the season for Ohio State, and I don't think it's close. I don't think it's close. And you have a lot of options. You have a phenom, elite wide receiver who got yards during the playoffs. You have 2 NFL-ready running backs. You have a 5th-year senior quarterback, fresh from Kansas,
broke many records.
Who broke a ton of records.
Ohio State,
and I haven't even brought
records.
up the defense yet. Of all the people who could be season MVPs, I just named a bunch. And I haven't even got to the defense yet. And I'm still going to give that award to Donovan Jackson. The number 1 defense in the country, filled with future NFL players.
Now, how many sacks, Jared, do you think, how many sacks do you think Will Howard was sacked this year?
Total the entire season?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
It goes in relation to the to how well the offensive line has played.
I don't know.
14.
14?
Less than 1 a game. That's awesome.
And
especially us looking at it, especially after the Oregon game, we're like, oh, look at all these injuries. How is Ohio State going to get around this? Like we are effed up. We are screwed. What is Ohio State going to do? And they just turn it around. This is very 2014-esque, very, where we lose to Virginia Tech. Offensive line looks just in shambles. What is Ohio State going to do here? They're down to they're without Braxton Miller, going to a redshirt freshman. Like how the coaching staff.
The only way it could have been more
finds a way.
And yeah, the only way it could have been more 2014 is if Devin Brown had led us through the playoffs.
Yes.
Devin Brown going to Cal, by the way, great fit for him.
What would have been?
We would have said the same thing about
what would have been more 24-esque, Jared, is if Emeka threw a pass to Jeremiah Smith in the end zone.
That's true. Which if Devin Brown had been the quarterback may become necessary. But yeah. But Austin says, which wouldn't have happened, but we would have said the same thing about Cardale Jones, who was just a complete unknown. Yeah, and we did. Yeah, it's a tremendous season. And I said it at the top of the show. I'm going to say it again. Never has a national champion been more undisputed than this one. Because who's going to complain at this point? Alabama? Sorry.
Zero.
Miami? Get out of here. The most undisputedest. Yeah. Put that on a t-shirt.
Yep, that's the new rule.
Don't lose
twice. No, don't lose 3 times.
Yeah. Unless you want to, win your conference. Yeah, it's the I don't really think that this has sunk in for me yet. And I had a conversation, and I won't say who. I don't know if they want me to say who. But I had a conversation with one of our active members in the Discord after the Michigan loss. And they had said, I don't even care if Ohio State wins the national title at this point. And this was days or a day after the Michigan loss. So I get it. But I'm like, we got a chance. This is still a great team. We got a chance to make a run here. At Ohio State, you win a national title once every 10 years, which I get on the surface doesn't sound good, but that's actually like an elite stat. That's a stat that anyone except Alabama, that's a stat that anyone in college football would take. Again, except Alabama, anyone would take that number. Because like, oh yeah, well, Georgia just won 2. Yeah, but they hadn't won one since 80 before that. If you're following what I'm saying. So I'm like, I believe you when you say that you're not going to be able to enjoy it. Even if we win the national title, I'm not going to be able to enjoy it. Okay. Once every 10 years, man, you got to enjoy it. If it happens, If it plays out that way, you got to enjoy it. And they very much enjoyed it. And
all right, Jared, but let me switch gears here. I know we've asked the question to our fellows in
real quick.
Discord,
Austin says Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia, and Bama are the only schools who have won multiple in the playoff era.
Yep. Favorite moment in the game, favorite moment in the national title game was a question that we asked here. We had Dinger say our ball carriers knocking Notre Dame defenders. Where are we? We are about 30 minutes in. Okay. Knocking Notre Dame defenders on their asses.
Yeah. Ohio State was hard hitting this entire playoff.
Yes.
Harder hitting than I think I had seen them all year. Like they were unloading on teams.
Agreed. Yeah.
Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State, only teams with active natty winning coaches. Yep. And I don't think Clemson's getting back anytime soon, quite frankly. Georgia's still recruiting at an elite level. Although Clemson is using the portal now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
that's why I say don't count out. I think next year is probably Clemson's, without going too far into this, because this is about Ohio State winning the title here. Keep an eye on Clemson next year. I think they could make a semi run. Well, Austin beat me.
Well, their path is easy because ACC.
All right. Austin, or not Austin.
And Klubnik is still their
Will Howard started the game 14 for 14.
Yeah.
Just completely on fire. Just perfect throwing, perfect at everything he was doing. Decision
winking
making,
at the sidelines,
winking, running, everything you would ask for in Will Howard. And that's exactly what we said at the beginning of the year. What we needed Will Howard. We didn't need Will Howard to be JT Barrett. We didn't need Will Howard to be Justin Fields making these great throws. We just needed Will Howard to be Craig Krenzel. Just get the ball into your playmaker's hands. That's what we needed Will Howard to do, and that's exactly what he did this season. 73% completion for the year.
No,
an Ohio State record.
No offense. No offense to Craig Krenzel, but he surpassed that.
Yes, he has. I'm just saying, like, he was like Craig Krenzel, where Craig didn't have to do anything special. He had his moments, like everybody will always remember Holy Buckeye. He had his moment. He had his moments too throughout the season as well too. Everybody will always remember that deep shot to Jeremiah Smith late in the fourth quarter to ultimately kick the field goal to put the game away there. Everyone will remember that throw from Will Howard.
And let me say this. I have been incredibly impressed with Marcus Freeman during this playoff run. I think he had a number of amazing coaching decisions. The last second substitution against Georgia on fourth down comes to mind, but a bunch of just small, great coaching decisions. I thought he coached a great playoff, but man, I think he had some real head scratchers in this game.
Yeah, the fake punt was very obvious.
Very obvious.
The very questionable on kicking the field goal. I still don't understand why
that's a terrible
kicking a field goal. You're still going to be down by 2 scores. I did
terrible
not
choice.
understand.
It's terrible. There's nothing to understand. It was a terrible choice. Kicking the field goal was not one of them, says Austin. I don't agree. I get where you would say kicking the field goal was not one of them if you're Ohio State. Not one of the good choices, Jared. Oh, my bad. Sorry. Now, he had running his quarterback 9 times in the first drive of the game. And you can say, well, it worked. But Riley Leonard was not himself the rest of that half. He eventually came around in the fourth quarter, but that first drive took something out of him. Like, I don't think that was a good long-term choice. They run their great running back 3 times. And I get it. The game situation ended up being what it was. And when they did give him the ball, it didn't go that well. 4 times. They only give him the ball 4 times. Was it 4 times for 3 yards? Is that where I got the 3 from? But you had to figure that out. Yes, that is where I got that from. 4 times for 3 yards. Marcus Freeman coached a great playoff, but he had many questionable calls this game. I think he made a lot of really poor decisions in this football game. I could almost see kicking the field goal making sense if it didn't take your team 6-7 minutes to perform a drive.
Yeah.
Your team is in touchdown scoring position. You need to go get a touchdown because it takes you 7 minutes to get down the field. That's who you are as an offense.
And maybe he was just scared to try to do to.
Well, don't coach scared.
Touchdown there. Well, I agree, Jared.
I know you do.
But looking at what Ohio State has done in the playoffs and in all year too, with that red zone defense, just absolute shutdown of opponents trying to score points. Maybe that got in his head, and he just overthinking himself. Like, hey, I'm just going to get points here. I know I'm not going to get a touchdown here, but not the right decision. But
also,
that's the only logic thing I can think of why he would do that.
Well, Austin says getting 3 straight 2-point conversions is tough, so I get it. And again, and I know we aren't disagreeing, Austin, so don't take this as me disagreeing with you because I know we agree.
And
but again,
play calls. Those are great play calls for those 2-point conversions.
Right. But again, if that's your justification for kicking the field goal, I get that if you're Ohio State or if you're Texas or if you're Oregon and you can score quickly. But Notre Dame can't score quickly. You have to go get those touchdowns. You cannot kick the field goal there. It takes you, like I said, 6-7 minutes to put together a drive. You just don't have that much time left. You have to go get the touchdowns. You have to. It was just an incredibly poor choice. Incredibly poor choice. Yeah. I feel like this is the Tress influence on Marcus. Well, on top of that, you don't have Nugent back there. Notre Dame's had worse kicking issues this year than Ohio State has. The fact that their kicker missed that was totally foreseeable. That was totally foreseeable. Yeah, again, I like Marcus Freeman. I like Marcus Freeman a lot. If Ryan Day chooses to go to the NFL at some point and Marcus Freeman wants to come home, I would welcome him home. I would love to have Marcus Freeman as the head coach of Ohio State, but he coached a really bad game in this game, which is, like I said, a shame because he coached really great games against Georgia and Penn State.
All right, running backs here. Judkins gets 100 yards on the ground, another 20 in the air, 3 touchdowns for the game here, averaging over 9 yards per pop. That 70-yard run will help that. And Henderson had 49 yards, 4.1 yards per pop. Against this elite run stop defense, 5.2 yards per carry.
Yeah.
And Howard had more rushing yards than Leonard did. I did not see that. I did not see that coming.
It makes sense because Howard chose when to run. Because Howard had, 3 non-designed running plays? Was it 2 or 3 where he just decided to run and he had the field? Was it more than that? I don't know. I don't remember.
There's a lot more. But he had 16 carries.
Wow. A lot of those were
16 carries for 57. Yeah,
a lot of those were at the end of the game.
Yeah.
Where they were just killing
even
clock.
5 of them, even still, take out 5, that's still over 10 carries in the game.
Yeah, and Spikes, that's what I was getting around to. And that was Notre Dame saying, we're a man team. We're going to play man. Man. We're a man team. Well, when Ohio State hits that 5th drag route on you, maybe it's time to reconsider. When it's 3rd and short and the game's on the line, maybe don't put someone one-on-one with Jeremiah Smith with no safety help over the top. Because again, you aren't Texas. You don't have the corners to do that against Ohio State. Straight up. If you're Texas, maybe. If you have the best cornerback in college football, the Thorpe winning cornerback, like Texas did, maybe you take that risk. Notre Dame didn't have the dudes for that.
Now, when they're jumping up and down, screaming for help.
That poor dude.
Right before the snap is taken.
That poor, I didn't feel bad for him. I'm not going to lie, but but you feel for the guy. But also, if you're that sure that's where the ball's going to go, maybe don't go running to the opposite side of the field. I know, play the scheme, play the defense, but maybe don't. He was thinking it was a reverse. He might have. Yeah, he might have. But he was very deliberate. Well, he may have, I guess. We'd have to ask him. I don't know. But I'm not sure what he was thinking. We might never know what he was thinking. He might never give us a truly. He blindly busted his ass to an empty sideline. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's something to be said, which apparently is one of the adjustments Ohio State made after the first Oregon game, where they were just giving the defensive players more permission to read and react and not be so tied down to the scheme, which is a lot easier to do when you have the number of snaps out there that Ohio State has out there, right? You couldn't, Ohio State's not going to be able to just let the guys go out and do whatever they want to do next year. Not to the same degree. You don't have those same snap counts returning on the defense next year.
Yep.
And while I think Ohio State can compete next year, I don't think I really am not anticipating a repeat next year, but that's a conversation for the offseason.
Before we go into the defense, just want to briefly talk about the Ohio State receivers here.
But Kyle, before we do that, I think it's time for our second ad break. Join us at thesloopcast.com. We talked a lot about our Discord server. It's honestly a great group of people. If you're looking for some place to chat on game days, or you're looking for people to chat and recruit, it's a different experience than a message board. I'm not going to say it's better or worse. I think there's a lot of great Ohio State message boards out there, but it feels more like a text chain with your friends than it does a message board. I love the Discord format. I love our Discord community we have here. We had a blast when we won the Natty. I tell you what, as much as a blast as it was, nothing beats. No moment has ever been better in our Discord server ever than the man Jack Sawyer ending Texas, which, and I said this during Know Your Enemy Notre Dame. That was the national title game in my mind. It was Texas. But regardless, I'm in the ad break. So thesloopcast.com, discord.thesloopcast.com, youtube.thesloopcast.com, support us financially at patreon.thesloopcast.com. Let's get back into the show. There was a better moment against Indiana when Downs returned the punt and we all tagged Kyle. It was legendary. That was also fun. But situationally, I think I can look up the metrics for the Discord server. I don't think the Discord server was ever reached the height that it did during the Scoop and Sawyer, which I have to say is not a nickname I'm particularly fond of. Whatever. Jack Sawyer's making money off of it. That's all that matters.
Emeka, so it was just about to talk about the receivers. Emeka, Jeremiah, Tate, Ennis, all had receptions in this game. I was really happy to see all of them having contributed in the game here. Ennis and Tate made some important catches on certain drives there. Obviously, at Emeka, well-rounded. 6 receptions, 64 yards. He was just under 30 yards short of the Ohio State record. Well, 30 yards, I think, exactly of the Ohio State record of most reception yards there.
Was that season or career?
I believe it was career. Yeah, career. Yeah, okay. It had to be career.
He did get the receptions. He did get the receptions record.
He did get the receptions, yes.
They probably should have done if they just did like a pop pass instead of a reverse or an end around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Ohio State didn't have to rely on big chunk yards to move the ball. Like there could have been times where they could have tried to throw the ball deep to Jeremiah Smith, which they did the one time, but they didn't need to do it. They were getting big chunks off of what the defense was giving them, running the ball, those slants with Emeka, with Tate. Just hats off and great blocking too by this receiving core too. There were some amazing blocks, especially by Emeka. Emeka is an excellent blocker.
So is Judkins, by the way. That needs to be said.
Yeah, Judkins is as well. Yeah.
Judkins had a great block on the deep throw to Jeremiah Smith to extra secure the game. I don't feel like the game was in.
I think
was that Trey?
Like 7 in.
Oh, that was Trey. My bad.
I think they set 7 in on that play there.
Stupid.
And yeah, Trey got that extra block in there to give him just that extra time to wind up to to throw a dime to a dime.
I could be mistaken, but I thought I saw Ryan Day say that Will Howard checked to that play. That he had that was the second option. He said, hey, if Notre Dame really loads up the box, check to the pass. So they called a run. That third and super long play to Jeremiah Smith, that Will Howard checked to that on the line, which I think is a interesting little note and a thing you can do when you have a incredibly experienced, incredibly seniored quarterback.
Yeah, because those first two runs did not work that well because it was 3rd and 11. It was 3rd and 11 on that throw there. So yeah, a great decision by Howard to check that. Defensive players here. I know that Cody Simon won the Best Defensive Player award, but there's so many players that you could have given that to. I'm not saying Cody wasn't deserving.
He was one of like 5 guys who could have got that.
Yeah. Cody, Styles, Caleb Downs, JT Tuimoloau, Tyreek Williams.
Yeah.
Put Tyreek in there as well too.
There are several players on this team that will go down as like some of my favorite Buckeyes of all time. Tyreek and Sawyer among them, but not limited to them by any means. Yeah, it's again. This was, and by the way, I'm still kind of pissed. I'm pissed that Notre Dame scored 23. If I'm being honest, can I be real for a second? I'm real mad about that last touchdown. This Notre Dame team had no business scoring over 20 against Ohio State. They just sort of lost track of Greathouse there for a minute and made him pay, but whatever.
6 receptions for 128 yards and 2 touchdowns. Yeah, they definitely did for a little bit there.
Yeah. We have a channel on the Discord server that's like just the active roster. And this morning I actually went through and I updated it for the next season. And I was like, I'm removing guys off of the list. I was getting like real sad. It was just like, I would say the good news is that, and we don't need to talk about next season yet, but the good news is that Ohio State was rotating a lot. So even though you're losing a ton of starters off of this defense, the guys coming in behind them have a ton of experience.
I want to mention some of those here that got at least a stat in here somewhere. McDonald, Curry, Reese, Jackson Jr., Houston.
Yeah.
All of them got significant time in this game.
Yeah. As did Mitchell Melton, who announced on Tuesday that he's going to Virginia. Like, and Gerd was out there too. Guys who are in the transfer portal contributed heavily to this team, this game. And then shout out, by the way, to a lot of the freshmen who aren't even officially on the team yet. And to the 2 new offensive tackles who are coming in next year, who were running scout team for Ohio State in the lead up to this game. Like, there are a lot of like unsung heroes on this team who aren't even on the team yet in an official capacity who contributed to this game. They start their Ohio State career as national champions. Yeah. I hope they get rings. I don't know.
From what I heard, they do. They will get rings because they are part of the team.
That's amazing. Imagine having a ring before you're actually enrolled in class. Not enrolled, but attending class. Attending class. They're enrolled, I'm sure.
First class.
All scout teamers get one. That's amazing. Imagine being Devin Sanchez and having a ring already. But hey, he didn't get a shoe deal. Felt like the entire second half, Notre Dame's offense was a series of very random plays that all worked in a stumbling, almost disaster every time sort of way, scored and confused every time. Honestly, Esquire, you're right. I think one of the worst things they could do in regards to Riley Leonard was force him out of the pocket, because that was about the only time he actually threw the ball well. If Riley Leonard actually got a chance to stand in the pocket for a moment and throw it, he missed the wide receiver bad. If they got Riley Leonard panicked and scrambling around, that's actually when he made his best passes.
So many close tackles from this defense. So many just a foot off, just 6 inches off of getting Leonard or making a play. That's happened a number of times. And credit to Leonard. I mean, Leonard's done that in his career where he's able to escape and make plays, and that's why Notre Dame recruited him to come play his last year at Notre Dame.
No, Austin, bad Austin. But yeah, I love this team.
And this team, it was, this defense will go down as one of the best, maybe the best defenses in Ohio State history. Like, just really looking back at what they've done. They've only let up more than 20 points 3 times.
Yeah. Kyle, they're in the conversation
3 times all year.
Kyle, they're in the conversation for one of the best defenses in college football ever. I mean, realistically.
Yeah, and they got very few turnovers. Yeah.
Realistically, I mean, again, there is no other team to be this undisputed, to be undisputed to the level that this team is undisputed national champions. Because even if you look at, and then I'll just pick on Ohio State. If you look at 2014, and I do believe Ohio State, I mean, it's real easy to say Ohio State should have gotten into the playoffs after they won it, right? It's real easy to say that after the fact. But there was a very real debate as to whether it was going to be Ohio State or Baylor or TCU at the time. It would have been great for the sport, not Ohio State necessarily in that case, but for the sport to have a 12-team playoff and have Baylor and TCU and other teams in that playoff.
Makes you really think about what if the past 10 years. What if?
And this is why I hate the Bulls.
What could have been.
And this is why I hate the Bulls, because the Bulls stole this offseason that was amazing. We should have been having our entire lives. But the Bulls didn't let it happen. This is why I will very happily say fuck the Rose Bowl and all the other major bowl games. Because we should have been experiencing this our entire lives. And I'll be damned if anyone tells me that Ohio State couldn't have repeated in 2015 if they had gotten into that playoff. Not to say they should have gotten into that playoff, because I don't think they should have, based off of merit. But they would have won it. But they would have won it. See, Esquire. It's wild to think about what could have happened over the past, even if you want to just take it back to 99 with the inception of the BCS, what these 12 teams playoffs could have looked like. But we'll never know. But what I do know is that they are talking about, and I don't believe this is official, but they are talking about expanding the playoff to 14 teams in 2026, which I've been really against, but I'm starting to come around to it. And the only reason I'm starting to come around to it is every time they add more teams to the postseason, Ohio State wins a national title. So, like, and I do think Ohio State's positioned incredibly well for 2026.
And each time, like, Ohio State took advantage of that because they were the 4th team to make it. and they were the 8th team per the
seeding.
The seeding. Thank you. They were the 8th seed, so yeah, they took advantage of those opportunities there.
Yeah. Yeah, and like just beat Michigan next year. That's all I'm gonna say about that. Just beat Michigan next year. I think with the severe amount of talent turnover Ohio State's facing this offseason, presumably starting a redshirt freshman, you're going to have, I'm just going to throw this out there now, probably going to lose to Texas in week 1. Probably going to lose to Texas in week 1 at the start of next year. And that's fine. It's not a big deal. Just like losing to Oregon wasn't a big deal. They're going to be looking for revenge. We're going to be having a bunch of new starters, starting a redshirt freshman quarterback. Texas is probably going to beat us week 1 next year, and it's fine. I don't care. It's fine, and I don't care. It just letting you know how many months in advance. But all of that to say that Ohio State, because of the expanded playoffs, all they have to do is get all these new starters congealed, and then they can make a run again because they'll still be good enough to make the playoffs. Ohio State will still be good enough to make the playoffs next year. I don't know if they'll be good enough to win it next year. Beat Michigan. Whatever it takes, whatever you got to do, go beat Michigan next year. And that's my one and only goal for next year. My one and only goal for next year is to go beat Michigan. Because again, it'll be an uphill battle winning it all next year. It's not to say it's impossible. I'll say that Ohio State might not look great at during the first half of next year, but they'll have the opportunity down the stretch and ultimately just beat Michigan. It's really all I want in 2025.
Mm-hmm. We are Jared. I know we're at the end of the episode here. We're kind of wrapping things up. Now that
we brought the North to the South because the SEC's dead, Austin. Yeah. Austin's pointing out that it's snowing like hell in the South right now. Yeah.
Now that the national title has finished, Ohio State claims their 9th national title. We are 6. I'm looking here. I'm looking at my board here, and there's 8 here, and I need to add a 9th one on here. So it's 9. We are 6 weeks from spring camp already.
It's insane. Absolutely insane.
So, Ryan Day did briefly talk about that. He said, I don't know how it's going to look. It's not going to look like previous spring camps. He doesn't know what it's going to look like, but it's not going to be the same as what it has been. Like, it's just crazy thinking. Like we are 2 months away from spring camp starting up here. That's just wild. Crazy thinking about that.
Absolutely wild. Yeah, and I know he said because of everything the players have been through and everything else, but at the same time, they're going to have a lot of new faces on that team, so they kind of have to. Yeah. Spring camp is going to be a difficult thing to navigate this year for Ohio State.
It was this time last year when we got a lot of announcements, like Judkins announced he's coming to Ohio State. We see all of these videos of getting ready for the 2024 season, and the players are hitting the weight room. They're getting ready and pumped up, and like they're all laser focused for the next year. And we see them in their we see them with the reward of all that off-season work here. And like, what do you do here from this all this extra play time here that you had to do, and you only have 6 weeks to rest essentially? I don't know what this is going to look like.
I will say that most of the So here, in my opinion, what you do is you take the guys that are returning starters, which isn't going to be a lot. Ohio State's not returning a lot of starters. It's like 3 or 4 on the offense and 2 or 3 on the defense, depending upon who comes back and who doesn't. If they're returning starters, take spring off. Austin says 4 on offense, 2 on defense, likely. Those guys get the spring off, or at least they'll go no contact. They're not taking it off. You know what I mean? But they can go no contact through the spring. Why? Those guys don't need contact reps. But all the other guys who aren't starters, they can just go. I think they can just go through spring camp as is. And, you know, a lot of those guys did get heavy reps even when they weren't starters, especially like along the defensive line, for example. So, you know, you manage those players however you want to manage those players. But again, it's not a lot of the guys who got most of the reps aren't coming back.
So, I know we're at the.
Who cares? It's the national title.
The mark here. I know here. I know. I was going to finish here of just asking everybody one last question here. Who is the hardest player to replace for next year?
Hardest player to replace. I mean, that can be answered in a number of different ways. Because like you can say Will Howard, but Julian Sayin, everyone at the Woody loves Julian Sayin, but you can't replace the experience.
Yes.
Yeah. And then Austin says it's Tyleik Williams, but I like Cade McDonald. Exactly. It's Jack Sawyer, but I love Jackson and Curry.
Mm-hmm.
Right answer
Donovan
might
Jackson.
be Donovan. I mean, of course, but they're bringing in 2 excellent left tackles through the transfer portal, and they're bringing and I think that the young guys who have been playing on the interior are going to age and develop into really good players this next year. Emeka is also super consistent, but Innis, yeah, that's the thing. Who is, I mean, I think who you probably miss the most is maybe Jack Sawyer, just from a leadership standpoint. And
yeah,
because as much as I said that Donovan Jackson is the MVP of this team, and he is, I think if you've made me choose one player who allowed this national title to happen, I'm still going to go with Donovan Jackson as far as in season. But let's not forget, it was Jack Sawyer who rallied the seniors to come back for this season.
I think the more I'm hearing you and reading the comments here, my first thought was Donovan Jackson, but I kind of thinking it's more Jack Sawyer.
And again,
I think he's going to be the hardest to replace.
And that has nothing to do with Jackson or Curry. Because I think I really like them. I really like Jackson. I really like Curry. I think it's just from a leadership standpoint. Sometimes you get those guys in the locker room who are just that next level as far as leadership and all of that's concerned. And it's hard to replace that sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about a guy who's like the heartbeat of the team? That was Jack Sawyer for this team this year, especially on the defense. So I don't fear replacing anyone as far as pure talent is concerned. Who they got the next guy up at every single position. I fully believe that because mm-hmm. of what they've done in the transfer portal as far as like, plugging holes along the offensive line. Although I'd really like to see them pick up a third offensive lineman at some point, even if it's just a depth guy. especially if that depth guy is experienced at playing tackle. But as far as next man up, they've got him at every single position. Again, returning maybe 6 starters, give or take a couple, depending upon, what Iggy decides to do, what Quinshon decides to do. Although I expect both of those players to be gone. I expect Sonny to come back, but he might not. So, that number can fluctuate a little bit. But at every single position where you're losing someone, I feel like they got the next guy up to replace him. And that's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Absolutely.
But it's that leadership. You do wonder, you can, one of the problems is that you have this senior class, this recruiting class that was, Jack Sawyer and all of them. This recruiting class is all leaving at the same time, pretty much. There's not a lot of juniors on this team. As I just talked about, the number of players who were like, oh, are they going to stay or they go? Stay or go? We're not sure. It's only a handful of guys. I think it's literally Quinshon Judkins, Iggy, Sonny. And I think that's it, really. As far as like starters who you're not sure if they're going to go pro or not, I think that's it. But so that's nice, but there's just this power vacuum, or excuse me, this leadership vacuum. That's why it was natty or bust this year. Yeah. So one of the things that, Kyle and I in our respective homes recording a podcast don't really know is who's going to replace the leaders. Are you going to have solid leadership on this team? Because again, you have all of these seniors. It's really hard if you're a sophomore, if you're Caleb Downs, for example, to walk into this team and be a leader when you're surrounded by people who have 50 starts on this team and who are fourth year seniors with, again, 50 starts. And how do you walk into that locker room as a sophomore? Denzel Burke literally started 51 games for Ohio State. Yeah, set a record, which was previously held by Luke Fickell for most starts. At least, is that just on the defensive side, maybe, or all time? I don't remember. But how do you replace? Probably all time. I'm not sure. I know it's at least defense, maybe all time. So you have all of these seniors on the team who are now just Thanos snapped gone. That's a tremendous leadership vacuum. Who's going to step in and fill that? I think that's going to be one of the biggest questions. So if you talk about who do you replace, who's the toughest to replace? Henderson, Sawyer, Howard, the other leaders on this team, your captains, essentially. It's replacing the captains. I think that's going to be the biggest challenge. And not only that, but Sayin is a question mark. The quarterback is so important and everyone expects him to be great. The coaches love him. Everyone's super high on him. Everyone's like, Sawyer or Sayin's the starter. Don't worry about it. Don't even think about it. We're not even sniffing anyone in the portal. Sayin's going to be the starter next year. All signs are pointing towards don't worry about Sayin. He's going to be great. Mm-hmm. But you just never know until he's the starter, because we felt that way about McCord a couple years ago.
Yep.
But you just kind of don't know until they're actually in the position. And that's what's so scary about quarterback, because there's so much laser focus on those guys. So yeah, I guess that's a really long-winded answer to that.
All right. I'll finish with this, Jared, as this is being released on Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025.
Yeah.
We are 218 days until kickoff with Ohio State hosting Texas.
Yeah.
Maybe a 1 versus 2 matchup here. It is going to be, it's going to be just the natty ceremony. It's going to be handing out rings, most likely a night game. College game day is probably going to be their first game of the year. It's like maybe one of the biggest recruiting nights as well, too. Like it's huge.
It's not going to be a night game. I hate to break it to you.
If college game day is going to be there and it's on AB, if it's going to be on
Ohio State's hosting it, therefore it's a Fox property.
Oh, that's right. That is right.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's going to be a nooner. Yep. Can't wait to draft OSU Texas next year. Yeah. Unless you're a Sloopcast fan, you don't know what that means. But if you do, then you do. If you know, you know. Yeah, no, that's a Fox property game. It'll be a nooner.
All right. Well, that was fun. Let's do this again next year. Right. Ryan Day sliding home, rounding third base and slides home.
I don't, not even entertaining that bullshit. I'm sorry. I know I've done this rant before, but Jim Harbaugh is literally the son of a coach whose brother coached in the NFL, who he was frequently trading coordinators with. For him to insinuate that literally anyone else was born on third base is disgusting. The man is walking football privilege. That's it.
Yeah.
And, you know, Ryan Day's history is fraught. I'll just leave it at that. If you know, you know. And if you don't, I'm not going to bring it up. For Harbaugh to say that about anyone other than maybe his own brother is disgusting. But we don't need to talk about that anymore.
Yep.
All right. Austin's just throwing picks down in the... Oh, these are GIFs. I should probably be clicking in here to let these play. We got Jack Sawyer signing the camera. We got some celebrations.
It's really just kind of buying time here because we are under 2 minutes left in this basketball game.
Oh, maybe we should get out of here so we can actually watch the end of the basketball game.
Sure. All right.
We're like a 110. Kyle, what do you have in Kyle's corner?
I got nothing. We are the champions.
Yeah. There we go. It's all that matters. Just beat Michigan next year. That's all that matters. We'll figure out everything else later. Jared, you can definitely not stream the basketball game. No, I would never do such a thing. That would be piracy. All right. With all that being said, I need to introduce the band. Tonight's ending music will be by, let's go with a Columbus base. You know what? Ohio State music royalty punk band from back in the 90s. They're called the New Bomb Turks. Feels appropriate. So with all that being said, I'd like to encourage everyone to drink local beer, listen to local music, and of course, support local podcasters. Once again, these are the New Bomb Turks.